Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Last week, we talked about the topic of regret and how do we move beyond regret and how do we live without it moving forward. And I want to circle back to that just a little bit and talk about an area that we might get hung up on as far as regret goes. And I'm going to start with a story in John 20. So we learn in John 20 about Peter denying Jesus. That Jesus had told Peter, before the rooster crows, you're going to deny me 3 times. Peter said, no way. I love you, Lord. I'm with you. I'm following you. There's no way I'm going to deny you. And I believe that confidence came from a genuine place. That with his current understanding, with the current environment he was in, he wholeheartedly believed there was no way he would ever deny Jesus. From what Peter had experienced, what they had been through, the knowledge he had up to that point says no way this happens. Later on, we move to the crucifixion, and Jesus is getting arrested. Peter denies him. When he was looking at the face of punishment and probable death, fear came out in the form of denial. When that environment changed out of something he was comfortable and used to, fear got to speak, and it came out as denying Jesus. After the crucifixion came, Peter tells the other disciples he's going fishing. Now, he was a fisherman before Jesus met him. Before Jesus said, follow me, Peter was a fisherman. He went back to the familiar. And how many times after disappointment, embarrassment, betrayal, do we just go back to what's familiar? We go back to what we know, regardless if we have fulfillment in that, regardless if there's joy or purpose in that, but it's familiar, so we go back to it. While they're out fishing, a man appears on shore, and they learn that it's Jesus. He asks if the men caught anything. He instructs them to throw the net on the other side, and then their nets were filled with fish. And this story parallels the first time Jesus appeared to them. The difference is this time, once Peter knows it's Jesus, he's jumping out of the boat to get to the shore. He's jumping out of the boat to get in front of Jesus. And this is what I mean about when I had said last week that I don't believe there's ever square one. Once we've started something, I don't think that there's back to the beginning, back to the square one but we can think it looks like that based on the environments, the company we're around, whatever's surrounding us, our physical location. It can feel like we're on square one. Once you know and you have a relationship with Jesus, there's no more square one, because you're no longer afraid of punishment or fear, and there's no overwhelming shame because you know what's going to meet you on shore. Even though that you've messed up, even though that you may have denied him, you know what's going to meet you on the shore. And so after Jesus, you jump out of the boat. You know that in his presence is still the best place to be, regardless. You know that in his presence is where you're going to find security, where you're going to find your footing, where you're going to feel grounded, where you're going to feel safe. Jesus did not bring up Peter's denial when he got to shore. He fed them, he nourished them, and then he met Peter with restoration and asked him 3 times if he loved him. He restored him each time of the denial. He denied him 3 times. He restored him in love 3 times. Jesus has always been and will always be more concerned about moving forward as opposed to whatever happened in the past. He's going to meet us where we're at every single time. He isn't going to give you a lecture on what are you going to do? When are you going to figure this thing out? I'm really sick of meeting you here. I need you to figure it out. It's going to always sound more like, you are meant for more than this, and so I just wish you wouldn't. But if you do, I'm right here. I wish you wouldn't forget who you are, but if you do, I'm right here. Even after the denial, Jesus still trusted Peter. When he asked him if he loved him 3 times, he still said, nourish my sheep, care for my sheep, love my sheep. A denial, a mess up, a mistake doesn't disqualify us. It doesn't make us useless to Jesus. It doesn't make us useless to the Father. He allows us to meet us where we're at. But he can still use us in the middle of it. If we allow him, I believe he'll show us restoration in each area we feel like we've been disqualified. If you think you've denied him and you have regret around the misuse of money, I believe he'll lead you to a place where you can feed, shepherd, and nourish his sheep related to the stewardship of finances. I believe he'll restore relationships with finances. If that hasn't happened yet, you still have an opportunity to show people joy and confidence in the midst of that mess and say that it's possible to still be here, still be grounded, still be secure in the middle of the mess. If you feel like you've denied him and you have regret around parenting, I feel like he'll meet you right there. He'll give you the opportunities for restoration in those relationships, whether it's with a parent or with your children. And if that hasn't happened yet, you still have an opportunity to nourish, feed, and care for his sheep, saying, I'm right here. And you get to encourage somebody else that may not know how to cope or maybe having a difficult time if they're just entering it. Not having it all figured out doesn't disqualify you. Jesus can still use it. You don't have to figure out everything and know everything before he's going to want you and trust you to love his sheep, to feed his sheep. I learned in a program that I went through that we tend to pull people out of their pain too quickly. And so sometimes I think shepherding, nourishing, and loving his sheep also looks like saying and agreeing that this situation kind of sucks right now. That sometimes we want to make people feel better, and so we try and just pull them out of that gutter really quickly. But what we end up doing is we don't allow people to process, work through pain, and heal from it. But the outcome tends to be more of a bearing of those emotions, suppressing those things, as opposed to really healing and working through that. And so one of the biggest things that I think I've learned is that it's okay to sit in the pain of it. It's okay to sit with somebody in their pain, and you don't have to necessarily try and fix it or pull them out of that right away. That I think that there is a way to relate to somebody that is different in the middle of the pain than if you're just trying to make them feel better. If you've fallen short, you feel like you're missing it, you're not. It's okay. He can still use you. Regret and shame will have you in a chokehold if you allow it. Shame and regret are not going to allow you to jump out of the boat. You're not disqualified. You're perfectly loved right where you are, and he's willing to meet you there. Jesus is on shore waiting for you regardless of what you did. Waiting to nourish you, to love you, to restore you. Jump out of the boat.